Hello, my name is Jenna Palmaville, and my research project is on the Society of the Spectacle by Debord. The reason why I chose Debord was because my favorite band, the 1975, references him and the spectacle in a couple of their songs, so I wondered what exactly is the spectacle and who is Debord. I wanted to get down to the bottom of this and dig deep into what Debord really stood for, and what he believed, and compare it to what society is like now, and why the 1975 reference him. Debord was born in 1931 in Paris, and he committed suicide in 1994. Debord was a theorist, a French writer, a filmmaker, a poet, and the founder of the Situationist International in 1957. I read a scholarly journal, The Lessons of Debord by Vincent Kaufman. Kaufman begins the article by looking into what little there is about Debord's childhood, how he was born following the Great Depression and did not have much. His father passed away at a young age, and his mother did not take care of him very much after the death. His mother left him without any inheritance. He grew up virtually ruined, but Debord didn't really complain about it because he was free from a lot of things. He did not have debt, and he did not have a social status. He was very free, and he also wasn't very poor either. Debord finished high school and got his diploma, but he did not go on to further his education in college. Kaufman continues to follow Debord through his life, looking into why Debord had the mind state and mannerisms he did. Kaufman psychoanalyzes Debord along the way, trying to paint a picture of why he was set on his ideal of situationism, why he kept so much to himself, and why he was so anti-authority. Kaufman also goes into a good bit of detail about how Debord wanted his writing and movies to be received. As I read The Society of the Spectacle, it was very interesting and also a bit confusing to understand exactly what he was talking about at first. The spectacle, in which I understood, is in short terms mass media, which includes advertising, television, celebrities, film, and writing. Debord was against capitalism and the way that the big corporations presented the products they wanted people to buy. The spectacle is used as a tool for capitalism. He thought that it was very unfair for the rich companies to be luring in poor people of the society by using new technology to persuade them into thinking that they need to buy their products. With the way that Debord thought, he was a situationist. He thought that marketing and advertising was a very controlling aspect to the society, and it would interfere with the way we thought. Even though it was good for capitalism and our economy, people were buying things that they didn't necessarily need, but more so want because the advertising made them think that they needed it in their lives. Nowadays, we see ads for new phones that come out, brand new incredible sports cars, and the most expensive clothing lines. The spectacle is not a collection of images, but a social relation among people mediated by images. I pulled that quote straight from the book The Society of the Spectacle. I think it's very interesting to think about because Debord believes that this way of living deteriorates the way that people of society live their daily lives. People are no longer focusing on themselves, but more so their image that other people see them as. People back then started to care more about their image and if they were rich enough to buy these certain products or services, and then others would view them a certain way because of it. Debord wants people to be able to speak truth without interruptions and be able to have real experiences without worrying about our image or appearance to others. According to the Encyclopedia of Britannica, in this type of society, they felt that freedom to choose how to live was replaced by the freedom to choose what to buy. This theory is very relevant in today's society with the way that social media almost controls everyone. We want the world to know what brands of clothing we're wearing, or we want everyone to know that we got to go on a luxury vacation in the Bahamas at an all-exclusive resort. But back then, they didn't have social media like we do now. This book is over 50 years old, but it does make a lot of sense in our society. For example, this first ad is a cigarette ad. It explains how after you've had such a long and tiring day, that you deserve to smoke an L&M cigarette. It's trying to persuade you into thinking, you know what? I have had a long day, and I do deserve to smoke a cigarette. And the second ad is for the new Mercedes SLK. It has a retractable hardtop, an HP supercharged engine, and an undeniable style. Look at all of those brand new features. Enticing, right? These are the kinds of things that Debord was talking about. I read a chapter of the book The Spell of Capital, Reification and Spectacle by Samir Surish. Sirish constructs this chapter of his book as a different view of Debord's The Society of the Spectacle. He looks at it as a view of reification of life. He describes how Debord views the environment as an almost physical thing, drawing parallels to how the idea of life has also shifted to an almost physical thing. He also compares Debord to Western Marxism, discussing how Debord draws from Adorno's The Idea of Natural History, which describes how the modern man lives in a commodified world, where every aspect of life is commodified. To help me understand a little bit of what Karl Marx believed in, I watched a video called Karl Marx on Alienation by BBC Radio 4. Marx believed that work allowed us to live, create, and to flourish in our own essence. But back then in the 19th century in Europe, work destroyed humans, but specifically the ones that had only their labor to offer. In a capitalist economy, laborers really meant nothing to the huge corporations. So laborers had to work day in and day out for barely any kind of wage. The video explained that the work that they did alienated them. Same goes for factory workers. The products that they were making were far more expensive than they could ever afford, so those products would be shipped far away to stores so that these big corporations could make even more money and the factory workers would hardly make anything. They spent long hours doing very tedious tasks, and they would go home for only a few short hours so that they could eat and sleep. Marx suggested that the workers could line up and revolt against these corporations, and that is what Marxism is. Sirish wraps up this discussion by writing how Debord reworks the then current idea of natural history. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, the Situationist International was a very large art movement in Europe. They wanted to create situations for people where they wouldn't be distracted by the pressure to buy things from companies. The Situationist International was a huge influence on the strikes that were held in May of 1968 in France by more than 10 million people. Students and workers showed up to strike against the capitalist government. They wanted to remove the division of social classes. Although the strikers did not win, there was a newspaper release that identified all of the alienations of modern society back then. It talked about the possibilities of an equal economy and what it would be like if it were to be changed. The working class wanted everything to be equal for everyone because they just thought that it was fair. Many were very frustrated at this time because of it. I read a chapter of the book Paris, Amsterdam, Underground Essays on Cultural Resistance, Submersion, and Diversion by Christoph Linder and Andrew Hussey. In this chapter, they explained how the Situationist International had a lot of influence on traveling artists from Germany, Scandinavia, and Belgium. They were underground cultures between Paris and Amsterdam that were created and influenced by the Situationist International. This started the British punk rock movement as well. A Dutch artist named Constant had met Debord, and they became good friends because of their artistic abilities. The two had a very abstract idea, and the piece of work was called New Babylon. It consisted of maps, designs, and photographs of what would be a Situationist city. They published text together about New Babylon, and shortly after, Constant resigned from the Situationist International, and this caused some tension between Constant and the group. This led into politics and started the strikes in 1968. Overall, I found out what the spectacle is and what Guy Debord stood for through multiple different sources. The spectacle is how the society tries to lure us into thinking we need certain products or services. It interferes with our truth and peace in our everyday life and shifts the way that we think. It makes us care more about our appearance and how we are viewed by others. I now understand why the 1975 referenced them so much in their songs, because that is what they preach and what they stand for. They have very particular movements when they release albums, and it relates a lot to what Guy Debord and the Situationist International presented. These are my references, and thank you very much for listening.